Welcome to the teams. I'm here with Big Let Dog. How you going, Let Dog?
Fantastic, Pommy. Fantastic.
That good.
Very excited for Sunday. It's too far away though. It's too much build up for a Sunday game. Give me a Saturday or a Friday. Let's get it done and dusted and celebrate the win all weekend long.
Mate, I've got to say, Sunday games are a bit like weekends at your mother-in-law's, aren't they? There's something that just seems to drag out until it's there, and it's a painful experience, but very important experience. Carlton are 2 games clear in the 8. If you look at the games going on this week as well, potentially, if old Fremantle tonight do us a favour, Carlton could be 3 games ahead with this one. And it's GWS, a team that probably we have a lot of memories, don't we, with GWS? And whether it's, some of the trades we've done, do you know what I mean? Or whether it's the time that they beat us with 16 players. It's not a good hunting ground, is it?
That's the tough one for me. That 16 players on ground. I think did Mumford had cleaned up Mark Murphy in that game from memory or something like that. That was a rough game. I also remember that quite a few years ago now. I think we won by 1 point or 3 points or something in a huge clash in Melbourne. That was one of the more exciting games. 1 point. 2017, we beat GWS by 1 point at Marvel Stadium. Sam Doherty had 35 disposals. That was one of the great games, but for the most part, you're right, Pom. It has been it's pretty painful.
It ain't been the best. I've got to agree with you there. And obviously, GWS a little bit of a different kind of kettle of fish this year, aren't they? They're a little bit. They're not the usual. I just did my preview today, and it's weird to talk about GWS being one of the worst sides in the comp, as opposed to a side that's traditionally where we are, aren't they, in recent years? They're in and around the finals. And obviously, we're usually messing about in the never ranks. So I think it's going to be a really interesting it's got like a changing of the guard, isn't it? And GWS, when you've watched them this year, their biggest issue has been scoring. They've gone out, spent a lot of money on Jesse Hogan. He's out this week as well, which is good to know. That's what happens when you pay big money for someone. So it's going to be a real interesting kind of final team for them because they've rung some changes through necessity, but also through some injuries.
Yeah, I think to your point, they're not the classy, silky smooth, fast-moving team that they once were. They've lost quite a lot of players. They've actually, when you break down their best 22, they've got a lot of job doers that play regular footy for them these days, which I think speaks to the amount of talent they've lost, both through trade and through injury. But guys like Lockie Keefe and stuff, nothing against him, but he's playing pretty much really regular football for GWS. And back in the day, it was much more talented players filling those roles. So it's interesting. They have sort of evolved as the list has evolved, and they've lost players, and they're still not to be trifled with. But on paper, I like us this week, especially with their outs.
Well, here it is. There's the finalised team right in front of you. Adam Sard, Lewis Young, Lockie Plowman, Nick Newman, Jacob Wheatering, Sam De Hochte, Matt Cottrell, Patrick Cripps, Adam Cherra, Will Setterfield, Harry Mackay, Jay Soss, Corey Durden, Charlie Kerno, Jesse Motlop. Your followers are TDK, Walshy, and Kennedy, and your interchange bench, Mitch McGovern, Zach Fisher, Lockie O'Brien, and Josh Honey. Pom's boy is in, which means the sexiest man in a Carlton Guernsey of all time, Jack Noons, makes way. Liam Stocker makes way. Paddy Dow and Lockie Fogarty will be one of the emergencies. Not really a surprise aside, probably from Josh Honey coming into the side. That, for me, is a real statement of intent from Voss that they are going to be ultra aggressive and really look to take the game to them.
Yeah, and it looks like with Mitch McGovern back, Plowman holds his spot over Stocker. They're going to use Plowman, I would assume, in that traditional role we've seen him play, that smaller role where he plays on the dangerous forwards and negates them a bit. They've trusted him with that role in the past. The last few weeks he's had to play tall. I'm intrigued. I know people are, I'm sure, going to be mentioning in the comments. I'm intrigued that Plowman stays in over Stocker. I personally agree with it. I don't imagine a lot of people watching Will Pom. That's the surprising one for me. I like the Honey statement, but I wouldn't say I'm surprised by it. I'm certainly surprised that that they've stuck with their man, Lockie Plowman.
Well, I mean, Voss keeps going on about, doesn't he? He keeps going on about Plowman playing his role. Do you know what I mean? Keeps going on about it a lot. And to be honest, you look at Stocker, it's probably a shock to some. A lot of people talked about the Rowan matchup. Funny enough, Geelong only targeted him 6 times. So Rowan, that was the least he's been targeted. So I think it's probably stiff on Stocks. I think probably what they've gone with Plowman there is they know he's got a winning record against Toby Green. And I think that's maybe played a part of it. It is kind of a weird thing. Even GWS mentioned it last game that for some reason Green can't get an edge on Plowman. So maybe it's that. I do know that Stocker, though, has been deployed a lot deeper up the ground in VFL the last 2 weeks. So for me, that's a big one. Connor here, anyone who says that does his role, doesn't watch our games. Weird one, because Michael Voss said it. So
yeah.
That's a worry.
Watches
Michael
the
Voss
games,
isn't watching the games.
I'll just quickly run through GWS's ins and outs, by the way. In Adam Kennedy, Braden Pruce, the Pruce Moose, Kieran Briggs as well. So they brought in a couple of guys who can run in the ruck there, and Zach Sproul come in. Out goes Connor Iden, Jesse Hogan, Josh Kelly, Matt Flynn, and Tom Green. So Kelly out of that midfield, probably a big win for us. Averages about 37,000 disposals against us. Tom Green also getting rested or omitted, probably omitted, listed as managed. Is surprising because he's had a pretty good year, and Hogan out obviously as a target up forward. So I think we've certainly got the better ins and outs than they do, although they are bringing the heat and they're going to try and win it in the ruck, it looks like, bringing in both Bruce and Briggs to support. So there'll be a bit of a job for Tom DeConnick and Jack Silvani this week because no Pido to come back yet.
Well, it's going to be an interesting one because I think that watch this game, and I think what it really screams to me with that selection is they've looked and they've seen that basically GWS's whole methodology is taking away Carlton space. That's kind of where they've resorted to, and it's probably their only real avenue to win this game. So it really says to me that he's going to maximise Sam Walsh and Chera. So we've lost an 82% player who plays on the ball. You're probably now going to see Sam Walsh, Fisher, and Chera really up their minutes, really get in and around the ball. And I think there's a guy that no one's talking about. And I did say, I don't know who this is because for some reason StreamYard's not picking it up. So if you can make yourself known in chat. But I agree with you. I think Cripper here is the smoky in this one because no Tom Green, who is their physical enforcer this year, has a lot of responsibility. I think that's huge for Cripps, that Cripps can really have a bust-out game this week.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout. I know that this probably isn't relevant to all of this audience, but Supercoach-wise, in the 2 games Hewitt didn't play this year, Cripps scored 138 and 151. He finds himself finding the ball quite a lot when there's a gap in the midfield. So I think he will step up. I think Fish, the Hewitt outpom in hindsight probably explains the Josh Honey inclusion. Fisher spends more time in the midfield. They bring Honey in to spend more time in the forward line. I think in hindsight that probably makes sense now that we're talking about it. The emergencies, I don't know if we listed those, Pom, but Dow, Fogarty, Nunes, and Stocker are the emergencies. So I guess they're kind of the four fringe players at the moment, aren't they? Dow, Fogarty, Nunes has been a staple this year, but his form has dipped, and then Stocker in and out of this side consistently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a big advocate on emergencies that you can't play a player that you're really trying to develop because it is technically a buy. It's technically a buy. So, I mean, for me, if you're picking that as emergencies, I want Stocker to go and play his role because he's not a back pocket. And watching the VFL, Stocker doesn't play back pocket in the VFL. So, whatever Carlton are working towards with him, VFL time, Dow, keep him in the VFL as well. He's going well in there. He's obviously not part of Voss's selections. And in a way, I'm kind of good. I'm kind of glad he's not playing because I think it creates a side agenda that there's way too much focus on Paddy Dow and we're trying to play finals. Do you know what I mean? So for a want of a better word, fuck Dow. Do you know what I mean? I just want to get into finals. So for the sake of his career, play him in VFL. So for me, I'd probably give Nunes the VFL spot and Fogarty. He's had another batch of time in the VFL, real good, sustainable thing. So we probably could do with a break and Nunes go into the VFL. So for me, I think it's Fogarty. But I mean, the emergencies, you don't want to see them, do you? So I mean, when I pick an emergency, I'm praying to Christ I don't see them.
Yeah, you're essentially picking someone and going, I need to be okay with the fact that you aren't going to play this weekend, but you also need to have played well enough to possibly play this weekend. I think the person that ticks the box in that list is Lockie Fogarty, just probably because of his got a little bit more versatility than a Dow or a Stocker at this point. We haven't talked about these two guys. Will Setterfield comes into the side and Lockie O'Brien. The people out there don't need to know what our thoughts on Lockie O'Brien are. We said it last week that we thought he'd only be out for a week, which he was. He comes back into the side to take one of those wing roles. But Will Setterfield, what's he been bringing in the VFL, Pom? And what role do we think he's going to play? Because he's named at half forward flank, but I don't imagine he's probably going to line up there.
Well, I mean, Will Setterfield, interesting fact about Will, last week, 92% of game time on the wing. On the wing. And he had 40 touches. And if you go back and watch that, that wasn't his endeavours. That was really... what he really did well was find space. Absolutely find space. Found space very well, and the players found him. And that is something that O'Brien as well was on track for 32. Only played half a game. Half a game. Both of them were real standouts in their defensive transition. It was interesting. You know me, I'm anal. I watch a lot of VFL football and soak it up. Daniel O'Keefe mentioned something that the Wings were set a task this week of really honing a certain skill set, but he didn't talk about what that skill set was. Two of them had massive numbers in defensive transition. Carlton scored 53 points last week from defensive transition, and both Setterfield and him were massive parts, O'Brien and Setterfield, of taking the mark down back and then get forward. So it was an interesting change in the VFL. We haven't seen it all year from them. That's genuinely Stocker's role. So that is an exciting thing to watch if you are going to watch VFL this year, to watch Dow play. So, I mean, watch Stocker play in the VFL. See if they give him that role, because that was something that was very noticeable the week before. Stocker did Setterfield's job on the ball in stoppages, where that set 8% came from. So it'd be very interesting as well to watch Stocker these remaining games to see if that is maybe an insinuation. If Dow is out and gone, Stocker may be taking that spot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very interesting observation and one to watch, because I think, Pom, as the year progresses, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Paddy Dow, particularly once we get into October, but we don't need to start talking about that now. I've seen Paul Sebastiani in the comments, Pom. I think he might want to know where Dow is, because he's posted about 732 times in the chat, which I just love.
Well, I mean, let's spend a bit of time. I love Dow, my kid's favourite player, right? So I love Dow, big time for him. But I think it's really obvious why he's not in the side. I genuinely think it's obvious. And watch the VFL. They don't have time. Wingers are getting 40 touches. They ain't fucking getting 40 touches. Do you know what I mean? They ain't getting 40 touches in the AFL. Ed Langdon is the best winger by a country mile. Doesn't get 40 touches. He's as rare as rocking horse shit. So for me, that's it. The other talk we get as well is Plowman. Like, I'm not a fan of Plowman at all. And I think he's very one-dimensional and his skill set is very limited. But when you actually compare him against all the other teams that play a pure lockdown medium-sized defender, there is only 3 teams in the comp. And ironically, 3 of them are the bottom 4 sides. It's a very, very, very weak area. I think you will see a different Plowman this week because he's going to play
100%.
a lot more loose. And McGovern is going to be doing the hard yakka. The hard yakka. So what we need to get excited about is fuck the Dow talk, fuck Plowman. Couldn't give a shit about either of them. I'm here to win 4 points, get into the fucking finals. That's all Uncle Pom gives 2 kahunas about. What I'm excited about is the return of the one thing that stops us being a top 4 side. And that is our ability to transition and score. And you've seen the games where Carlton have been absolutely battered by good opposition. They are scoring 55 plus from our own attack. Our own attack. Our own, when we've got the ball, that is where we get fucking killed. 62 points last week against Geelong. We had the same opportunities versus Geelong of loose, what they classify as unaimed inside 50s. We got 20 points from that same area. That's a huge, huge area that Voss wants to address. And I have been told, and Voss doesn't talk about injured players. This week, all he's talked about is McGovern. Last week, all he talked about McGovern. I guarantee you, when he did this team sheet, McGovern was the first name on the fucking sheet. That is huge. So that is what I want the chat to get excited about, because that is a missing conduit. We've got Caleb Marchbank next week coming through as well. We've got Caleb Marchbank in the VFL this week on limited minutes. Suddenly, Carlton have huge intercept potential, particularly Kemp last week, 100% played as an interceptor. Carlton have identified that. That is very, very exciting for this football club.
Well, I'm glad you touched on McGovern, because I think you're right that starting point of scoring from transition, that intercept marker, that guy who can come off his man and read the play and intercept, is something we've missed for the majority of this year. We've had a few patchwork players fill it. Plowman's been filling it. We've had Marchbank came in for a game. I think he actually played on a man that game, but there's been a few players who have attempted to fill it. Gov finally comes back in, and if you go back and watch those first couple of games, he was vital to how we started the season. And the fact that, yes, there's always question marks over his health and he might get injured, but the fact that we've got depth all coming back and getting healthy at the same time, Marchbank, Kemp, there's plenty of guys who are going to be able to fill that role. So I think we're a lot closer now with a McGovern type coming into this side and pushing a Plowman outside of those tall 3 defenders. We're now at a point in the season where we're really going to see what our team actually is supposed to look like, and we've missed it all year. So we've spoken about it a lot of times on this show, Pom. That's the missing link for us at the moment, and that's where the next step of development and evolution will come. And we get a first look at it this week against a semi-undermanned GWS forward line. So there should be opportunities for a guy like McGovern to really impact this game.
Mate, I'm with you. And I think, like Kusa says here as well, there's still some players missing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you've got to look at it now. This injury list is starting to look orgasmic because it now fits onto one fucking screen as I'm talking to you guys. But, you know what I mean? Like, the only players that we're missing now, who you would presume are best 22, are Z Will, Matty Owis, and J Mart, and potentially Cunners if he's fit. And Boyd.
I don't think we can count him, but yeah.
Yeah, and Boyd. Do you know what I mean? And we've really got through that real rough patch, which for me is super, super exciting for Carlton in the terms of we've managed to get here. Do you know what I mean? But now we've got players returning. So this is the happy period. So that's why I find it bizarre. And I mean this in the nicest possible way. You know, I'm Uncle Pom. I protect all of you on social media. It's my habit. It's my hobby. I love doing it. And I go into battle for you. Got to start getting excited now. The boys need our fucking positive energy because they have got through an area, bearing in mind, Eagles at the moment are saying we're not as bad as a top 4 side. Look at the injury list we've had. You take out the pretend COVID injuries they had. Carlton have had 9 more injuries than them this year, currently riding in the top 8. And at the start of the season, were predicted to finish 11th, right? And they have had some catastrophic injuries. It's all right, you get magpies in here going, oh, but we've lost Grundy. One fucking player. Oh, we had a player retire that wasn't even best 22. Brilliant. Fantastic. Awesome. Carlton have had some proper injuries. And the fact that we're here now, you get Pitternet back week. And to cover that, someone just asked Pitternet. I predict Pitternet played 3/4 of game time. And I think next week and the week after are areas Carlton can really attack rucks. This week, I don't see it as much of a concern because they are one of the worst stoppage and contested sides in the competition. So for me, it's a really exciting period of time that we are now getting our best players in. And then VFL is exciting this week because Marchbank's there. Do you know what I mean as well? So we know Voss loves Marchbank as well. And it's funny, they say Voss has a soft spot for Kent, Marchbank, McGovern. That says how important they are to his system. I can't wait to watch the VFL this week.
Oh, it's going to be an exciting game. And you're right, Pom. It's an exciting time to be a Carlton supporter. And there are going to be some tough decisions made in terms of team selection over the next few weeks. The selection panel or committee, whatever they call themselves, are going to be making some tough calls. And people in the chat, your favourite player might come out of this side. And there's going to be reasons for it because it's a great story that all of these guys have been given opportunities this year to develop. But when we're getting to the business end of things, we're going to see, hopefully, our best side on the park. And that means not everyone gets to play. So it should, in the theory as well, Pom, increase the pressure on the guys in the side and make sure that they are performing their absolute best because there is now some serious talent pushing through, looking to reclaim their spot in this side.
Mate, looking at the 22, looking at the 18, do you know what I mean? Lockie Plowman. We know Lockie Plowman wasn't in Voss's best 22. Correct. So do you know what I mean? He was nowhere near it. So you'd say Williams, potentially what they do with Stocker, whether that's play him at high half back and Nick Newman rolls into the pocket, Jordan Boyd. There's a lot of options for his position. Do you know what I mean? You've got Matty Cottrell there. You've got Noons. Do you know what I mean? Waiting in the wings. What we know Voss likes that reliability. Fogarty keeps playing very good football, 50-50 on the wing and on the ball. There is so many players that just underneath them, they're putting a little bit of pressure on them. And Shane's comment here, this is what we need to be thinking. This time, I went back and read the articles on 2016 Doggies. Pretenders was used a lot. Nah, they're not going to mix it up. Carlton by round 23 will have a full squad. And you watch when Pitternet comes in, and I implore you all to watch the VFL this week with Pitternet and watch it last week and count how many touches Dow, Setterfield and Fogarty got purely because every time the guy that was on them players was taken out by Pitternet. And just think when he comes into the senior side, there's another strength. So I'm really excited, guys. I'm really get excited. Do you know what I mean? I'm questioning why the fuck I'm doing this show with clothes on, to be honest.
I'm with you, mate. I'm with you. Me and you talk 24/7 about Carlton Football Club, and I'm in the same boat as you, mate. I'm pumped. We are gearing up. Look, I think to get to where we have, considering the circumstances, has been a real testament to the club. We've dropped a couple of games we probably would have wanted to win. We snagged a couple we probably didn't expect to win, but the whole time we said it since Wiedering went down, maybe a little bit before that. We just need to go 50-50 from here on out. The troops will rally, and then we'll finish off strong. And it's starting to happen. I'm expecting it to happen to kickstart this week with a nice win over GWS at Marvel Stadium. We like playing at Marvel Stadium. I'm excited, man. I'm pumped. And the good thing about this show, Pom, we talk about the ins and outs, the players that are coming in and out. We spend a lot of time on them, but because they're the ones coming in and out, a lot of the time they're the fringe players. Like we haven't even spoken about, like this week, we haven't spoken about Wiedering or Sard or Charlie or Harry. Like there's all this positivity that around the club and around the list that we have at the moment that we don't even get to because we've just got to talk about who's hurt or who's been dropped and who's coming in. So people should be excited.
Mate, I'm with you. I'm with you. And to answer your question, Darren, no, it's just the light. I don't know what that light is. That's a mythical light, but it's not a mohawk. It's when he had these shaved head. And get you. You've got 5 minutes left. Go on, throw your questions at us. Let's talk. Great question here from the legend that is Bretsky. How do you fit Pitternet in? If I was a betting man, I think a wing drops out.
Yep. Yeah, no, they've been running with 2 or 3 pretty much exclusive wing players, and then we know that they've thrown Walsh and Cherry out of the wings at times. They've been mixing it up a bit. I think you're right, Pom. I think they've basically been playing 3 wings to work out which one is droppable for a guy like Pitternet because Pitternet comes in, Tom De Koning spends a bit more time forward. Maybe he even rotates backwards with a Mitch McGovern at times. He gets a bit more flexibility. But yeah, Pitto was vital. The Pitto TDK combo was vital to those early wins in the season.
Mate, I'm with you. I am with you. Thoughts on Stocker being dropped, and we'll combine that. Let us know your thoughts as well, chat, importantly, and what is Stocker's position. I think Stocker's best position will be on the ball next year. I think Carlton will move him up on the ball like he was as a junior. For now, I think it's high half back, which is chock-a-block. Do I like him being dropped? Personally, I would have probably given him the go over Plowman, but that's because I've got some kind of anal retentive thing about height. I hate height because David Teague ruined height for me. Ruined height. But I understand it. Obviously, I'm not paid 6 figures. If my ass was on the line, I'd probably look at Plowman has a winning record versus Green. So if it's all right for me to sit here with nothing on the line and say, yeah, I'll drop Plowman, fuck him, bring Stocks in. But probably if you were all going to call me a twat in the comments if I picked Stocker and we lost, I'd probably pick Plow.
It's just probably a known quantity thing that's the decider there. It's probably a 50-50 call, and they know that Plow's done the job in the past, so he stays in. I don't mind Stocker being dropped. I think he's committed to the club. I want him to keep developing his craft, and I don't think in this side at AFL level he's going to play in the midfield, but he might get that opportunity at VFL. So go there, develop the skill, get better, and come in next year and absolutely dominate. And he might have been there this year, Pom, but he missed the whole preseason, remember? Like that might have been the plan to get him into the midfield, but he had a massive setback.
You know what, as well, you've got to remember the back line under Bolton, when it functioned its best under a lot more pressure, did have a Marchbank Plowman combination. So I don't mind that, Connor. If he can get fit, you could potentially see, with Newman spending 30% in the last couple of weeks at back pocket, you may see that, and Carlton go really offensive. Like Geelong, they play Stewart and SDK. So we'll finish off last couple of minutes. Give me your predictions, and I'm going to do it different. I always throw a curveball. I want the leading tackler inside 50 and your best on ground. Go!
All right, Pom. Well, obviously, I'll tip the Blues. I'll tip us by. I'm only going to tip us by 4 goals, 24 points. Best on ground. It's such a boring answer. It is going to be Patrick Cripps, but that's a boring answer. So I'm going to say Jack Silvani kicks a few. Give him best on ground. And leading tackler inside 50. I know everyone's going to expect me to say Durden, but I think it's going to be Matthew Kennedy. I think he's going to float forward. He likes impact. His ground ball gets in the forward 50 are generally pretty high, and his tackling, I think creates some scoring. So Matt Kennedy, leading tackler inside 50 for Carlton for me.
Yep. So the forward 50. Someone asked which. Yeah, you got technical. I like it. You've been hanging around my kids, I reckon, because that's what my kids do. I'm going to go Carlton by 49. Most tackles inside 50, Charlie Curnow.
Ooh.
He's going to back up last week. He had the most. And best on ground, getting his first ever free Brownlow votes with a 7-goal return and a 4-tackle inside 50 performance. The greatest player to ever play the game. Charlie Curnow. There he is. That's my predictions. I've gone
You
bold.
kiss Charlie very sensually every time. I'm into it. It's always passionate.
The two things my wife worries about are my phone calls with you, and if the guy saved in my phone, Lek Dog, is really a guy, and it's not my secretary or something, and also the attachment I have to this doll.
When we win the flag, you're going to be taking that thing to bed every single night.
It takes up less room than my wife as well. So I mean, it's not a bad payoff. But thank you very much, everyone in chat. As always, it's my favourite time of the week. Potentially, if my wife is nice, I may do a watch along on Pomino's channel with the VFL so we can cheer match bank home and we can enjoy the VFL together. If not, I will see you Sunday for the watch along, where we can't really bully GWS fans because there's only about 2. So... But we will bully them, but there's only 2. Lek Dog, where can we find you?
You could just look up at Lek Dog on Twitter. I mean, you can just Google Lek Dog. I'll show up. All my stuff shows up. So, and I think a video of a chihuahua in a hat shows up as well. So either way, you're going to have a good time.
You just find me behind a bin somewhere.
Yeah, I'm around, If you see me at the game, come and say g'day. A few people have started noticing me thanks to this show, so I always love chatting Carlton. So if you see me, come say g'day.
Honestly, check out as well his podcast, Jock Reynolds, if you want to be good at fantasy sport. If you follow that advice, you'll be top 5% all the time, every time. We'll be back, though, next week. Enjoy your weekend. Go Blues.
Go Blues.